welcome to the stage the creator and showrunner of Penny Dreadful, Mr. John Logan. Dorian Gray, Mr. Reeve Carney. Dr. Victor Frankenstein, Mr. Harry Treadaway. And Ethan Chandler, Mr. Josh Hartnett. Okay. So many feels, so many feels. I think what I want to do is start with the finale reveal. Because I feel, for me as a fan, there was a holy shit moment at the end of the show. There were like 8 holy shit moments, but the one that rose above all of them was when we saw that Ethan Chandler had an actual beast living inside of him. So first of all, I imagine that, John, you always knew that the finale was going to resolve in the way that it did, because I watched it the second time and then there were a million clues. But was that path really clear to you from the beginning, or tell us about yourself?
Yes. Well, first I want to say apologies that Ava and Tim couldn't be here, but they're actually working while we're all unemployed, so we're just here. I spent 10 years of my life thinking about this show, and it's my first television show, and I tried to take it seriously because every time I've been at Comic-Con, I've been sitting out there and walking the halls and buying the merchandise, so it's kind of very emotional to be sitting on this side. And I have such respect for you and for what we believe in. Because to me, horror is not about death. Horror is about exaltation and about transference and transformation. And so I thought about these characters for a long time, particularly fictional ones. Because with Dorian Gray, with Dr. Frankenstein and the Preacher, certainly characters from Dracula, I had great writers that inspired me to sort of take their stories and evolve them. Ethan, Vanessa, Sir Malcolm, Brona were my creations and had to fit into what I thought this show was about. And what I think this show is about is the monster in all of us. The thing we must embrace, the thing that frightens us, the thing that makes us finally who we are. So when I started thinking about Ethan Chandler, Our Eyes into This World American, I went to something very important to me, which is hiking and being out in the West. I'm native Californian, actually native San Diegan. I would see coyotes, and occasionally I would see mountain lions. And I thought, all right, well, there you have it. He's a werewolf. And so as I began to sort of build Ethan's character, that became central to everything that I created. And I remember my first meeting with Josh, you will recall, I sort of led with that. I don't think it's the kind of thing you can like lead, like sort of subtly, I said, okay, I'm glad you write the script, you're a werewolf. You know, which at that point, the meeting would be over, it would go on, but thankfully it went on.
Good enough. I was able to read the first 2 episodes before I met John, and it just kind of felt like an inevitable yes. I mean, there was not much they could have said that would have turned me off to the project because it's so well written. But the werewolf thing was actually more of a, for me, it made me feel more ingrained in the actual world of this, of Penny Dreadful, because everybody else had their secrets. I want to buy it. You know? I want to put some, I was nervous as anything right now. I was telling these guys, I've done this one other time, and for 30 days a night, and I told these guys backstage, you know, just act, you won't be able to see anybody out there, it's not that big a deal, and I'm like,
yeah, I had to pee like for 7 or 8 days, so just constantly, I understand. I want to talk about, just before we delve a little bit more into the characters on the show, you were talking about the fact that you've been thinking about this show, this world for 10 years. Was there a moment where the world came to you? Because it's pretty innovative mashup, and it's very rooted in its, you know, in its literary roots, and it's very grounded. I think a lot of times people feel that horror can be kind of very outre and broad, but this is just, it's so granular and so so thoughtful. So what was the moment you thought, I'm going to crystallize all of these myths into one?
It came from, like all good television shows from William Wordsworth.
Oh, yes.
Reading a lot of romantic poetry about 10 years ago, at a period in my life, I was frankly depressed, and I found solace in reading those poets. That led me eventually back to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which I hadn't read in years, and I read it, and I wept. You know, I was so moved by that story of those two monstrous creations that are partly angel and partly devil, so equally, and I thought, well, this is a fascinating world. And, you know, really in a way, it has to do with how I grew up as a gay man before it was perhaps as socially acceptable as it is now. And I knew what it was to feel alienated from my family and my community, and I realized the very thing that made me different also made me who I am. And I decided to write about that. And that's where Penny Dreadful came from. And originally I thought, well, maybe I'll just do Frankenstein. But I decided I wanted a fictional character. And that's why I created Vanessa Ives. I wanted a female protagonist who lives in that world at a time when women would literally and figuratively corset it. And I thought that was interesting for characters who are grappling with demons that want to get out, that there's a danger to it. So I spent years, literally years, thinking about it. And the real inspiration for sort of bringing these characters together was the second generation Universal horror films, which I'm so happy I'm with an audience who knows what that means. You know, when all of a sudden the characters and the origin myths started mixing. And you had the Transylvanian Count and the British Doctor, and you had all this monster sort of coming together and forming a new cosmology. And that's when I said, rather ambitiously, that's what I want to do. And that's where it came from.
So it was Abbott and Costello that really got into this.
I want to talk. I want to talk about everything, you guys. Okay, so there's something very specific about your character, Josh. We discover at the end that he is capable of incredible violence. We know now by the end of the show what he's been doing all these nights in London when he's not working with the other characters. But when he's human, he's incredibly compassionate. He's probably the kindest and most emotionally connected character on the show. I'm sure John's probably told you why that is. I don't know if that's something that came from just from the script or something that you felt like you needed to apply. And he's incredibly sweet, and he just bucks people up in the nighttime. Do you think that's his human nature? Do you think that's because he's trying to counteract what he's doing when he's a wolf?
Me personally?
You personally, I want your opinion.
John can probably answer this better than me. He's seen, the next season. I personally think that when you're going to construct a character that has monstrousness that will eventually come out, it's good to get the audience interested in what he's like inside first. Maybe even kind of in a jerky way, make them love somebody who they're then going to hate eventually. But really for Ethan, it just seemed natural because he had in the scripts a lot of compassion for Vanessa's situation, a lot of compassion for Brona's situation, particular empathy for women in this world. And I think maybe, especially in the scene with Fenton, it kind of shows that Ethan may have been hurt in some way, specifically earlier on in his life. And when you've been hurt in a very specific way when you're younger, you have a kind of visceral reaction to violence. And maybe this curse is a direct reaction in a way to what he's most afraid of within himself. I'm not sure exactly. We don't know.
Yeah, John, was Ethan bitten, or is he one in a long line of werewolves?
To be decided.
Darn you! Well, let's talk
I have this elaborate backstory for Ethan, and I'm just, like all the characters, one of the great joys for all of us was episode 5. We went into Vanessa's background, and that was, right. And may we just say, all hail Ava Green, Perhaps the most fearless actor I've ever worked with. And we took such joy in that I'm delighted to say, next season we do something similar. And I hope, and I'm very excited about, and I hope to continue to do that for all the characters, because I personally find their backstories, how they became who they are, to be as riveting as what they're doing in the sort of contemporary story.
We had a few conversations about backstory, didn't we?
We did indeed.
Sure, you can share it if you want to.
Okay, so part of what's fun about being an actor is constructing the backstory for a character. When you're doing a play or you're doing a movie, you just have the text, you just have what's there, and you have to kind of argue with the director about what happened before and what's going to happen in the future, and that's how you create how the character interacts, in, not just in his words, but the way that he reacts with those words. And in TV, it's so much more organic because you don't know where the character's going to go eventually. It's kind of like living a real life. You don't know where you're going to be a week from now. You don't know what sort of events are going to shape your future. So John and I we had a lot of discussions about backstory, and eventually it was just like, get on with it, man. Just make some choices. Figure it out.
The other theme I think that's shot through the show, obviously, is the theme of love. People searching for love, people trying to bring love back that they've lost, whether it's familial, whether it's sexual. Dr. Frankenstein is really caught, I think, between the kind of this paralysis he's stuck in, losing everybody he loved at a very young age, and then trying to defy death. But I want to just talk about that last moment with the preacher at the end and what that scene was like to play, because I feel that Frankenstein's been very monstrous almost throughout the series, and then had these incredible moments where he has a lot of feelings.
Yeah. I mean, he's in touch with his sort of emotional side as well. He's got sort of incredible literary and poetical kind of interest as well. So I think he's a real mixture of the sort of obsessional, sort of obsessed medical kind of doctor and the sort of poetical young man. The scene with Rory was great. I mean, if you've got a day when you can hear Rory spin some verse for a while, it was pretty good. And it was great to sort of, play with that change, because it had been such a build-up of tension throughout the series. So to have that moment, to have a gun behind his head and pull the trigger was good. Thanks, John.
That was extraordinary. And the dynamic between them has been really wonderful too, because each is calling the other a beast and a creature and a demon constantly. I mean, that theme of the monstrousness. Even when Fenton looks at everybody and goes, so many monsters, and he's talking about all the humans. I mean, that theme is so elegant. Let's talk about another holy shit moment. Ethan and Dorian. Did you guys know that was coming?
When I originally got the part, I didn't know, but within about a week we got the episode 4 script, and I realized, and I told John, well, you better cast a hot guy as Ethan, and he did, so.
I want to ask John, and I want to ask the actors, because I know what my theories are, but this isn't my panel. Sorry, you guys, I'm not even looking at you, I'm just I wanted to hear from you guys what that meant. You know, I think out in the family sphere, people feel a lot of different ways about that union. I thought it was extraordinary, but I want to hear what you felt about what Ethan was going through and what Dorian was going through in that moment. Whether that is a relationship that they formed that's going to continue.
Right, you know, as a gay man, I thought it would have been corrupted and organic not to deal with all forms of sexuality in the show, as I believe we try to as I believe we try to deal with all iterations of what it is to be human, from the romantic to the psychosexual, to the sexual, to the horrific, to the psychological, to the theological, and I wanted to explore that in every conceivable way I could. So, you know, I've been asked a lot, well, is Ethan gay or bi, and what's Dorian's story? Is he just, you know, on the sexual? And, you know, the question to me is almost irrelevant, because I believe human beings behave in the moment in a way that is true for them. And let's face it, it's 2014. We can have people be true in a sexual way.
Yeah, you guys are just co-signing?
I think that, yeah.
I guess the second question is, what does that mean? I mean, Ethan runs home to Verona, so he's got other things to focus on, but I just wondering about the connection between these two characters and if it's going to continue.
Well, it's, you know, one of the great, as I tell the guys all the time, is never having done a TV show before, I had to learn a lot, and my learning curve was steep. And my boss, David Nevins, gave me the best advice, which is all television is about family, and that to me meant the bridge crew of the Enterprise, because that's my world. To David, it meant the Brady Bunch, and that's his world, and that's fine. And so I structured the 8 hours to build a family and to bring them together. So I feel the first season was in a way an overture, where we have all the pieces on the board now. And the great joy, I can tell you, of writing the second season is now playing with the characters, introducing, building relationships. Ethan and Vanessa, Dr. Frankenstein and the creature, and sort of mixing them in different patterns. So all the relationships go on and evolve, I hope in ways that are exciting and surprising.
Tell the people out there who are furious with you, John, why you killed Van Helsing. People, why you killed Van Helsing. People are just outraged about that. I thought it was genius. We don't need him, but you tell him why you're there.
Poor David Warner, I know Van Helsing. Well, I did that as a provocation, fan to fan, to say in a way, yes, I cherish the sacred text, but we are not creating or recreating the sacred text. One of the joys, I think, for people who know the novels and know the movie, that grew up on Universal and Hammer at every iteration, is where we ally comfortably with mythology and where we break it completely. So to introduce one of the major characters from Dracula and then dispense with him as suits our story, to me was a joyous act to do, because I think to the audience it says, we are liberated. You know, we respect what we have, but we are liberated. Come with us.
Cool. For Dorian, the Dorian character, for Harry and for Reeve, you guys were both recreating characters that we know really well, and I wonder how much of what you had known about those characters before you brought, I mean, they're very much new iterations of these characters and feel very fresh and very different, but I wonder how much of what you knew about those characters bled in to you creating these characters, or whether you just rejected everything you knew about them previously.
I felt it was my duty as an actor to at least study the work, and I brought that, let John know that I was going to do that, and he said, I'm glad you read it. But, you know, I asked him if he wanted me to incorporate any sort of memories from the novel into Dorian's psyche. And we decided that wasn't necessarily the most important thing, because we were taken in a different direction. But yeah, it was important, I think, to be aware. I didn't want to be asked the question, so have you read Picture of Dorian Gray, and say no. So I did read it, I love the novel, but yeah, I think we've taken it in a different direction, and it's something that I think exists in a more natural way in 2014 as well.
Yeah, I mean, Dorian's kind of a rock star of his era.
Well, yeah, can we say like some of the references that you gave, John?
Yeah, totally. This is like, here's how Dorian Gray evolved. I had in my head Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray. I had that sort of rarefied dandy in my head, this sort of petulant youth. And it was impossible to cast until Reeve Carney walked in, dressed just like that, wearing all of that beautiful silver jewelry his mother makes. And I said, well, that's it. That's Dorian Gray. I've absolutely found Dorian Gray. So the process of working with Reeve, and particularly Gabriele Pascucci, our brilliant costume designer, what I said to Gabriele was, rock and roll. Think David Bowie, think Mick Jagger in a Victorian era. So if you like Dorian Gray, that's the man to thank.
How much of what you knew about Dr. Frankenstein went into the work?
Just what's in the sort of, I mean, it's part of, you know, people dress up for Halloween, and it's one of those characters that's just around when you grow up. But I hadn't read the novel before, and I did before this, up to a point where it veers massively off being useful, I thought. So I sort of read up to a point a couple of times, and then just went off John's script, and went to Cambridge University and spoke to some professors about Victorian medicine and the ethics of the time, and had my mind blown by the kind of practices they're up to and the ethical procedures that weren't in place. And, you know, just their kind of, it's just such a fascinating time scientifically. I became really into the science of the sort of era, and just how they were, you know, at such groundbreaking times of science and discovery. And with all of that, and being in that kind of temperature of science, you know, that climate, the idea of creating life or creating something that's seemingly impossible didn't seem that impossible because they were undergoing such sort of groundbreaking discoveries at that time. So, yeah.
What was the most mind-blowing thing you learned about?
I mean, just the stuff that they used to get up to was insane. They used to like, they were doing stuff on how people's bodies can still move after they've had the head chopped off. And it's like galvanism, so they put silver diodes between different parts of the muscles and chop your head off and then make your arm move like that. And they thought that they'd discovered the essence of life, electricity, and it wasn't.
And I must say, all of that paid off because Harry is, without a doubt, our masterful prop actor. You know, you give a prop to Ava Green, she drops it and breaks it. You know, Harry is so specific. All the scenes where he's doing surgery, you know, it's actual Victorian surgical gear, and the practice and the detail. There are no insert shots of anyone else's hands. That is always Harry. And so, in a way, we fans will appreciate this. The other great legendary prop actor in our world is Peter Cushing. You know, who would refine and work detail, and sort of without knowing it, I think Harry is sort of channeling that. When I see it on the set, it always makes my heart happy.
I had to learn how to sort of do surgical stuff. It was fun.
You know how to do surgery now?
I can do surgery if anyone wants any surgery. Any minor complaints.
He also knows how to cut off your head and make your arm move involuntarily. Someone wants to volunteer for that.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the architecture of Vanessa's possession? Because I think, in as much as we've seen her backstory and we know about the moments where she was taken, it might not be entirely clear, or I would love for you to shed more light on the nature of her possession and whether this was something that was always in her, or whether this was something that she welcomed in, and just to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's that's obviously a primary part of the season, which is what up with Vanessa. And I always say that to me the uber question of Penny Dreadful is, who is Vanessa Ives, and what lives is she going to touch and how? And I love discussions with Ava about that very question, which is, did she invite this thing in, or did it take her? And I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. And one of the great joys for me in the second season is really delving into that more deeply. Not even just in terms of her backstory, but in terms of her standing on the cusp and having to make decisions based on her relationship with the other characters about good and evil. And so in the first season, I believe we present the question. In the second season, we begin in some way to answer it, I hope.
So you're not going to tell us?
Yeah.
Okay, so were there characters that you explored when you were building this world that you did not include? And are there new monsters that we're going to meet in season 2? You know, the season finale ends with essentially us believing that Mina's master is alive and well somewhere in the world and was looking for a hot brunette bride, which was not delivered to him, frustratingly. So what monsters are we going to meet? And are there any that you left out for narrative reasons?
Well, I explored a lot before I settled on, I always knew I was going to do the creature and Frankenstein. Dorian Gray came late, and I always knew I was going to rely into eventually our version of the Dracula story. And season 1 begins to do that. You meet Van Helsing, you meet Mina. But obviously we break from that text, and so as the series goes on, hopefully for a long time, we'll begin to lead more into the Dracula story. In the second season, you'll meet another character who's very important to that story, who will lead us further into the sort of Dracula origin story. I thought about a lot. I thought about Dr. Moreau, who's one of my favorites. So I would hope someday to get to the Island of Lost Souls, but we'll see how long Showtime likes our show. And next season is very different because, having spent 10 years building this world, I've charted out the first 3 seasons, pretty much in my head, rather completely and on paper, in terms of what I think the story is. And what excites me about the second season is the cosmology, the theology of the show gets much larger. And so in the first season, we begin to establish these characters, we build this family, and in the second season, they are thrown into a much more threatening, theological, and supernatural world. Yeah, right? So I'll tell you a little bit about the second season. Then we have a scene that we cut from the first season I want to show you. What was frustrating to me as a writer when I was done with the first season is that I didn't have a villain who could speak. I didn't have an antagonist who could have scenes. We have an amazing actor who plays our vampire, and he was brilliant. He did exactly what we wanted him to do. But I'm a writer who writes for speech, and especially in a show like this that is so hyper-literate in its own odd way, I wanted a human or semi-human antagonist. And so I created the character of Madame Kali, who appears in the Seance episode, and then briefly in episode 8. And she is our antagonist in the second season, and she's played by the great Helen McCrory. And I wrote the part, yes. And I wrote the part specifically for Helen and begged her to do it, and thank God she said yes. So she becomes our antagonist, and her supernatural world will then become the big threat to all the gentlemen seated on the stage with me. So there was a scene in the 8th episode where I began to sort of explore what that story was going to be, what challenge he was going to pose to our family. But at the end of the day, we decided to take it out because it seemed more appropriately a scene for the second season rather than the first season. So here's a scene between the brilliant Helen McCrory and the brilliant Simon Russell Beale, which will give you a taste of where we're going in season 2.
One of my favorite characters is Ferdinand Lyle. I think he's an amazing actor. I think he's amazingly written. He's hilarious. The first question I have is he a willing participant in this?
No, he is not. And Simon joins our family next year, so I hope you like Ferdinand Lyle, because he becomes deeply in glory.
He's extraordinary. I want to talk about the period because one of the things I noticed about his character is that he speaks in a false French accent, which was very much the fashion of the time. The British were obsessed with the French. Much like someone that you hate, you also want to have sex with them. And there's a word for that, which I'll spare you guys. You can look it up on the internet. And so he's speaking in this manufactured French accent. Was that something that came from you? Was that something you guys created together?
Yeah, we talked about it actually the day we did the table read, and he said, well, I was thinking about Cockney, and I said, I was thinking about European. He said, great. So here's a spoiler.
Yes.
His accent is actually a version of the great British playwright Tom Stoppard. So if you've ever heard Tom Stoppard speak, it's a bit like Simon's version of Ferdinand Lyle.
It's hilarious. I mean, he's really extraordinary, and I'm excited to see more of him. Let's talk about the period. How much did you know about the Victorian era when you started the show, and for the actors, how challenging has it been to be era accurate? Is it difficult? Is it easy for you? I mean, you guys are creating a world together, but how often do you have to stop down and go, that would have never happened? Or,
Well, I mean, a fair piece. I mean, I'm full-blooded Irish. My parents were from Belfast, so I was raised with a lot of sort of British and Irish history and literature from the time I was born here. So it's always been a part of my world, and I've loved the period. And I wrote Sweeney Todd, which sent me straight into the Victorian world, the screenplay that is. So it's a world I know pretty well, and as I said, I spent so many years researching it and reading it. I felt pretty versed to write our version of it. That's the thing. It's our version of Victoriana, you know, and it's heightened as appropriate to our characters. And the gents can speak to what it was like to walk around in those clothes.
You were really interested in Matthew Sweet's novel, right?
Yeah, there's a great book by Matthew Sweet called Inventing the Victorians, which became our Bible. And he's a great writer, so I encourage you all to get it. And he sort of like does some talking head interviews for us. And his premise is Victorians were more like us than we like to think. We tend to think of them as sort of puritanical, closed down, colorless, drab, black and white people, and they actually weren't.
The byline should be Victorians have sex too.
Yes.
for any of the rest of you, has it been challenging to work in that era? Has it been pretty comfortable?
I think it's a stimulating thing to go back into time and to sort of be surrounded by the props and the costume and the amazing props guys who, especially for all the medical stuff, and when you see the genuine articles of what people are operating with, with the saws and it's a good way into that sort of world and the costumes. I love a pocket watch. I'm missing the pocket watch, guys.
You can still get them.
Yeah, you can still get pocket watches. That's good.
The work that you've done with, you keep calling the creature, not Caliban. Is that a conscious?
Yeah, no. He's as Mary Shelley purposely gives him no name. We of course give him no name. Although in the second season he's forced to pick a name for himself. And he chooses the name of the dead poet, which is appropriate for that sad, poetic character. We always call him the creature, as Mary Shelley did most of the time.
I don't think that I'm saying anything that no one's thought of, but obviously to me there were shades of a Phantom of the Opera in the way that character was built. Were you referencing that material?
No, not especially. Although I love Gaston Leroux's book, and I love the musical. But it's the creature more than any other character. People say who's the most like you, and I say it's the creature and Frankenstein. If you would put them together, you'd have me. For good or ill. And so the creature came from my saddest, loneliest, most poignant place. Because when I read Mary Shelley, that's what I read. Does that make sense?
Sure. But it's an extraordinary reimagining because that creature has always been not just like dumb and unintelligent, but dumb, unable to speak, unable to articulate ideas. And there's something really exciting about the idea of reanimating a body that's been cold and bloodless, and then he is reading, Shelley and quoting poetry. And
yeah, and that's that once again is Mary Shelley. If you go back and I assume everyone here's read the book, but if you haven't, when you read it and you think of the dumb creature of Boris Karloff for the most part, and Christopher Lee, and some of those iterations, you read the book and you realize the most eloquent character is the creature, and he's heartbreakingly eloquent, and he speaks of poetry, philosophy, theology. And so my conception, with both Frankenstein and the creature, because they only exist as a binary existence, as far as I'm concerned, is they both grew up with way too much poetry. The creature learned language by reading poetry and Frankenstein's notation on poetry, and young Frankenstein, you should have given the expression, read poetry and it influenced him deeply. So it gave me as a writer, I must admit, entirely selfishly, the chance to let those characters explode in language in a way I couldn't do with Ethan Chandler or Vanessa Ives, because that wasn't their education or their sensibility.
There's another theme I really have been enjoying in the show, which is the characters' relationship to their own power. I feel like all these characters have incredible power over the people around them, and it's both this source of kind of intense hubris and shame. Everybody is both delighted and ashamed by their own power. I wonder if you guys could try to answer what was really a non-question. But maybe just speak to that theme. I mean, Frankenstein I think, can't stop this quest to discover the essence of life, but is doing monstrous things with this power.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes bad comes from good intentions and vice versa, I guess. That's all I can say about that.
I think that's just being an artist and being a human. That's what it sounds like to me. So I think.
Do you think Dorian has a lot of shame?
I think for sure. I think there's something, an inherent sadness, I think, that comes along with, if you can imagine losing everyone you ever loved, and kind of trying to think about how you would respond to that in your behavior. But I do feel, I think that the portrait bears the burden of his sins, but I think that it certainly crosses his mind every now and again, especially when he's confronted with that portrait.
I'm hoping we're going to see the portrait in season 2.
At some point we will see the portrait.
You're lovely, John. When you're looking, what are you looking at when you're looking at it?
The first time it was a black screen with a bunch of green pieces of tape on it. But eventually I saw something, but I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think that you and the rest of the creative team wanted the freedom to potentially elaborate or alter what was seen. And also dramatically, I don't think it would have fit in what became the chaos of the finale. There was so much going on. I think the show would have been...
Yeah, originally, in the first early draft of the script, you did see the portrait. He looked at it, and the audience saw it. But at the end of the day, when we filmed it and actually looked at it, we thought, you know what, this is something we want to hold off, because it is a great mystery. And it is, of course, the coup de grace of Oscar Wilde's novel. So I felt to expose it in the first season was just premature. So we'll tease it out a bit.
And it was Magic Eye. Do you guys remember Magic Eye? John wanted to integrate some sort of modern 80s sort of stuff into this. I wore hypercolor and this was Magic Eye, but it didn't work out. Didn't make a cut somehow.
Did you want to address that concept of power and shame? Because I think, Ethan, again, I mean, there's literal shame for what he's done, but I think there's a secondary shame, which is trying to kind of remake he spends all his waking hours trying to remake the world. And I don't know if thematically that pops for you when you're working, or if you see that for your character, that he's very much ashamed of how powerful he is.
Ethan in particular.
Yeah, well,
But are you talking about what do you mean by remake the world?
Well, I mean, I think like I said, I think he when he turns into a wolf, he's destroying almost indiscriminately, except for the very deserved ass kicking that he gave at the end of the season. But yeah, right, those guys had it coming. But
Somebody liked it.
but I feel like this incredible compassion he has, that he's trying to save Fenton, and he's trying to save Rona, and he's trying to save Vanessa. I mean, he's trying to save everyone. Every moment of his way, is trying to bring delight to people in whatever way he's capable.
We were talking about middle names backstage, and I think Ethan's middle name is Shame. He lives in a shame spiral. I think he just fears, he fears his own capabilities. He doesn't know what they are yet, I don't think, personally. And we've discussed it. I think that I think he knows that he blacks out, of course, and he knows that when he comes to, violence has been committed, but I don't think he understands the extent of what he becomes.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting in season 2 to see him react to that.
Right, because in season 2, Josh has done a lot of time talking about what exactly does Ethan know when these events, he has his little lycanthropic episodes. And what we came to is what was in one version of the script, which is he blacks out, there's blood, he doesn't know, it's horrific, and he feels guilty because he knows monstrous things have happened. And you see the scene when Ethan wakes up on the beach, the realization that something has happened. So in the second season, he finds out exactly what he is, and he has to grapple with the consequences of that, which is great fun for me to write, because every time a character makes a realization, it's instant free drama as far as the writer's concerned.
And it's going to be great for me as an actor because I spent a lot of the first season almost, but a lot of the first few episodes reacting to everything around me and kind of being sort of the eyes and ears of the audience. And that's a less proactive place to be than the person who's actually actively discovering what he's all about, finding out these horrible things.
John, will you please give us one little tidbit of a spoiler about what Ethan Chandler is running from back in America, other than the Indian Wars? I mean, I feel like the implication all along was he had gambling debts, or, you know what I mean, he had a bar fight. Obviously, that's not what he's running from. So can you tell us a little bit about that and about the relationship with his father?
Yeah, and it's something that when I talk about those sort of backstory episodes, something I'm looking forward to exploring, when we really go back and see how Ethan became a werewolf, and what his relationship is with his father. I'm not sure if that'll happen next season or the season after that, but it's something I'm continuing to tease out as Josh and I kind of figure it out together. But the essence of Ethan's relationship with his father was a dissatisfaction. His father was a titan of industry. Jared Chandler is his name. He had a ranch that covered most of California and Arizona, and he was a monstrous man. And he treated his son brutally. And at some point, something happened in Ethan's life that led to this curse/blessing, because that is the duality that makes all these characters interesting, that yes, he's a werewolf, but in the larger theology I talked about, or cosmology, there's other elements to it, which we begin to explore in season 2. And that led him to try to run away from himself. And sadly, it led him toward violence of the most extreme degree, which we'll begin to hear more about as the series goes on.
Are we also going to learn about the relationship between Sembene and
Sir Malcolm?
Yes, thank you. I'm just fanning so much that I've forgotten who I am. But between Sir Malcolm and Sembene and how they came together?
A bit. I mean, that's another, I think with all the characters, certainly with Dorian Frankenstein, with all the characters, with Vanessa and the creature as well, bit by bit we'll learn more and more. What I'm learning writing my second season, which is only the second season I've ever written, so it's all still sort of new to me, is when I want to tell those stories in terms of how the past relates to the present, and the moments come or they don't come. So eventually, God willing, we'll keep running for a while. I'll have a chance to dramatize all of these characters' stories, because I've spent 10 years thinking about them, and I just sort of like to dramatize them.
Yeah, you don't want to shoot your wad all at once.
Yeah.
All right. So if people have questions, why don't you guys start to line up, and we'll take some fan questions. give you guys plenty of time to ask. And yeah, you look delightful. You have something on your head. I'm hoping it's flowers and not a toilet seat. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Kaylee. I just want to say that the show is written so wonderfully, and as coming from a perspective of someone who wants to write in the future, these screenplays are amazing. And it's so rich in such wonderful dialogue. I wanted to ask everyone if they had a particular favorite line that was said on the show.
Well put.
Thank
Young
you.
lady.
I gotta say, I mean, it's such a joy and a privilege as an actor to work with a writer as brilliant as John. And when you get something that comes across, you know, your desk, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, that looks like that, I mean, it makes it so easy for us. There's a lot of work, obviously, we have to put in on our end, but it's really sort of like, I've told John this before, but it's sort of like how I imagine raising children would be, which is the goal is to not screw it up. It's like, it comes to you pretty much perfect. It's like, let's just not screw this up.
Fear-based acting.
Which is like most of it.
Monkey, no monkey, I think is my favorite line that I get to say ever.
No more let love divide or death can join together. Well, that was a good quote.
Cool. Did you not hear him?
No more let life divide or death can join together.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alexa. I'm going to ask about going from the sexuality angle. Just first a comment, John, keep writing sexually and morally ambiguous people. I followed you here from Skyfall. And I'm even wearing his shirt. As a woman though, I am a little uncomfortable because Vanessa seems to be showing a lot of the sort of dangerous female sexuality, that sex turns her into a monster, and I just wanted to know where you were planning on going with that, or what you were thinking.
Well, all the characters will continue to evolve, I hope, romantically, sexually, in every conceivable way. And I certainly would not say, I would be exceedingly uncomfortable as a writer who created a story about a strong female protagonist to think in any way the expression of her sexuality was to suggest there was something retrograde in expressing your sexuality. You know, let's face it, it doesn't work out well for any of these people when they have sex, you know, and you know, maybe that speaks to something about me. Wait a minute.
Probably not, John. Don't look too closely at that.
Thank you, John. But it's something that I'm going to enjoy teasing out in the next season. Indeed, we do have different combinations of sexuality, all of which I hope is joyous and terrifying in equal measure, just like sex.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ariel. In fantastic show. I was wondering, what will the ramifications, especially with like the relationships, be with after like Ethan finds out that Rona is now the creature's bride?
Yeah, it's that's like, yes, it's tricky, but I actually don't want to give too much away other than to say we're exploring, or I am currently exploring with my keyboard different ways to reveal that or not reveal that as appropriate to the characters. But honestly, in terms of season 2, the relationship that I'm teasing out probably in the most granular detail is Vanessa and Ethan. Because there's such a connection and pull between those characters, I felt it warranted a lot more granular stuff. Oh.
Well, look at you.
Yes. Well,
I hope you can get your question out through those fresh stitches. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Stephanie. I'm from Mexico. So this is my question. In the first preview, Josh asked the famous, controversial, universal question that, do you believe in God? So this is my question. Devil presence in the series also assume a God presence?
are the characters in this series, do they believe in God? Is that what you asked? Or are they good people? Both. I don't just say good persons or God persons, but looking at you is a delight. I'm assuming what you're saying is do the characters in the show believe in God? And are you talking about the actors or the people they play? The characters.
Characters for me.
Okay, great, thank you.
Frankenstein doesn't believe in God. I love your costume, it's amazing.
I'd say Dorian's agnostic.
Ethan believes in God, I think. For sure.
Yeah, and we, in sort of follow to that, we get deeply into theology next season because all the characters have to grapple with some version of eternity or not, either literal or supernatural. So it's something we're having fun exploring next season. Thanks.
Did you answer about Dr. Frankenstein? Does Dr. Frankenstein believe in God?
No.
No, I don't think he does. I
No.
think he's been playing God quite a bit. Right?
Yeah. I think he believes in himself. Oh, God.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Don't hurt yourself. Go ahead.
Hi. So I kind of had the. So.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
Thanks.
Yeah. Go you. You've already won. You can just sit down if you wanted to. No, answer your question.
Okay. Well, it's sad. It's actually kind of the female sexuality is bad question that was already asked, but I will switch it a little bit. So the thing is, usually in Victorian stuff, when you're portraying female sexuality as bad, you're like, oh, it's not actually bad, it's just the society. Like, oh, Victorians like to say that sexuality is bad, and I'm just like representing that. But you keep talking about your, John, you keep talking about your cosmology, creating this cosmology, like it's the way the world works. And in your cosmology, like an objective way the world works, female sexuality is bad, because when you have sex, you get possessed by a demon. So, does it worry you that you can't use the usual, it's subjective, it's just the way they like to say?
No. I would never hide behind Victorian mores because I don't live in Victorian era, and I'm a contemporary writing a contemporary show for a modern audience. In no way is sexuality in my world, my cosmology, as you say, a bad thing. Nor is unlocking a demon a bad thing. There is no good or bad. It is simply to allow the characters to progress to the truest version of themselves. And Vanessa cannot evolve until she faces things. And so if sex with Dorian unlocks that and brings something to the fore, theologically, in relation to the other characters, then that's what I need to do as a dramatist.
And I'll just say that there are many sexual congress, a lot of sexual congress that happens on the show where a demon doesn't come out. Brona and Ethan have been doing it for a while. Nobody turns into a demon there. I mean, I think there may be something about the fact that, I'm answering as if I wrote the show, that Vanessa and Dorian are these supernatural creatures, and that the energy between them unlocks something rather than it's just the sex. Also, don't forget that Vanessa did a dude in an alleyway, and that just went pretty great for everybody. I don't know what happened to the guy after that, but it seemed like it was a good time while it was going on. So, I wonder if there's something secondary about the idea of these people embracing their animal selves. All of the characters on the show, this battle between transcendence and humanity, and that sex is a very human, very human thing, a very animal thing, and that is what unlocks these other kind of really primal, episodes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you for your question and your shirt and your sandals. All right, next guy. Hi, yes, you.
Yep, hi, my name is Joe, and really quick I'd like to say to John, I myself am an aspiring writer, and you've really inspired me, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
And my question, this kind of goes out to everybody, I guess. You have John and Sam Mendes who worked on Skyfall, you have Eva, who was in Casino Royale, and you have Timothy Dalton, of course, who was James Bond in the 80s. I was wondering, what's it like working together with everybody who has been, related to James Bond in some way? Does that in any way impact the show?
It's dangerous. Lots of small guns everywhere. Tim's always a packer.
Just maybe also that the Bond franchise has spectacular taste.
Yeah.
Used to do, John Logan. Be brave. This is your opportunity. Hi there.
Hi, my name's Daniel. My question goes to Mr. Carney. Your painting that makes you immortal, was it a curse that was put upon you, or was it something that you actually asked for?
You know, I think of it as, and I think the novel explains this to a degree, that it was sort of an idle wish in a way. It wasn't necessarily, I don't know if that'll ever be explained. I think John probably knows a lot more than I do about where he wants to take that, but I think of it as an idle wish. It's something, you know, that whole concept of be careful what you wish for, you know, that, so yeah, I don't know that I have an answer for that. I don't exactly know how that happened, especially in our world. I guess I hope to find out at some point.
That moment with Vanessa and the priest, I think, kind of encapsulated the idea of being, you know, an extraordinary person, and that a curse can be its own blessing in its own way.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, if there's a theme that I'm most exploring in the second season, it's probably that very theme, which relates to all the characters in a way. The thing that makes them exceptional, extraordinary, whether it's the ability to bring life, the ability to live forever, the transformative effect of the werewolf, is a blessing and a curse simultaneously. And how do you exist on that fulcrum is what's exciting for me.
Cool. Hi.
Hi.
Be brave. You can do it.
I wanted to say thank you for making Penny Dreadful. It's really awesome. And my question's for Josh.
You can totally do it. I swear to God. This is gonna go awesome.
Thank you for finally bringing your werewolf out. I was just wondering, how are you going to tell it to the group? Like, is it going to go on Halloween saying, hey guys, I'm a werewolf, trick or treat? I was just wondering.
You're adorable.
Let me get this straight. Is Ethan going to go trick-or-treating sometime? John, is Ethan going trick-or-treating? Yeah, sure. I don't quite understand.
Well, you know what? I'll rephrase it. It seems up until the end of the show that Ethan has not had any control over whether he turns or not. But that last scene seems to be a choice.
Okay, here's what I think it is. Ethan has kind of set his life to the time, you know, to the cycle of the moon. And I think Ethan lives very little of his life not in fear of the next moon cycle, but he knows when it's going to come. He just doesn't know exactly what's going to happen. He knows he's going to commit some violence. And so when he sees those guys come in, just as the moon's rising and it's full, and he knows it's going to be full, it kind of couldn't be better for him.
So it's just perfect timing. But
Perfect timing for Ethan, not for Roper, not for Kid.
John, in season 2, as Ethan starts to understand who he is and what he can do, will he gain more? Because again, that theme of power, will he have more power over that other side of him?
I think the knowledge of it gives him a certain emotional power of it, but he is, as Josh said, he is a slave to the moon.
Ah, ladies know what that's like. What? All right.
Thank you very much for participating in Comic-Con. Please be aware that many members of your audience may be under the age of 18.
Does anybody come to an Archer panel? And also, by the way, your show's full of titties, so don't get mad at me. I'm not complaining or anything, I'm just saying. Go ahead and ask your question.
First off, I love your remake of An American Werewolf in London.
Okay.
My question is for the actors. Everybody has like Dorian seems to have a really fluid sexuality, and Ethan seems to be bi, and Victor seems kind of asexual. I was wondering if that influenced how how you play your character, or if it's just kind of a side effect of their characterization to you?
Personally, I think John kind of answered it earlier when he said that he thinks that sexuality in this situation should be treated in a modern way. And it's not necessarily about whether you are gay, straight, bi, and it's more kind of human sexuality is what human sexuality is, and given the circumstances, maybe every character could be attracted to one another in a certain way. And obviously, I mean, come on, look at Reed. I mean,
That whole thing really worked for me. Yeah, there was something also in that moment, and in, all the characters are so lonely. You know, I mean, this is people were just, trapped in isolation, and Victor more than anybody, just incredibly painfully lonely. Do you see him that way?
Well, I mean, I think there's always a bloody outside, so he's not as lonely as he'd like to be for a lot of this season. He's trying to get there, looking for loneliness.
he has an incredible hidden closet and a great imagination. I mean, something's going on.
Yeah, he's built some stuff. He's built this lab and stuff, which is pretty good. I don't think he's got that much time for dating. Tinder would probably be.
Victorian Tinder is just
Victorian Tinder.
one daguerreotype after another.
Who's in my local mile? Yeah, exactly. Always the creatures. Creatures probably not on Tinder. So.
Okay, this is unfortunately going to be the last question, no pressure.
Hi, my name is Marianne. I'm a student filmmaker, and I wanted to comment on the look of the show. It's definitely very darkly lit, and sometimes almost, in my opinion, hard to see what's going on. And the soundtrack itself is very low and eerie, and I was wondering if that's sort of like a sort of symbolism to do with the fact that you have to sort of lean in to see what's going on and hear what's going on, because these people have secrets, everything's kind of hidden in the dark. Was that sort of the influence behind the look of the show?
Yeah, absolutely. Working with Juan Bayona, directed the first 2 episodes, brilliant Juan Bayona, and none of us would be sitting here today without Juan Antonio Bayona, and working with him and Chava, the cinematographer, we developed a look. And what we wanted was sort of textures of dark that would be sort of additive. And if it draws you in and makes you lean in, that's good. If it makes you squint, then adjust your TV.
There was a particular actor on our set who said, "When in doubt, speak low and fast." So, bring people in.
Who said that? Was that you, Greg?